I wanted to give a shout out to Sharon. Sharon, where are you? Aren't these flowers beautiful and very fitting? Sharon, thank you for that. They remind us of the weekend, what we're celebrating this weekend. In particular, our nation celebrates our freedom. I was reminded, first thing yesterday morning, I walked out to water some plants, and I have a little 7-year-old who lives next door. And she ran out as I ran out, and she said, "Did you learn about Paul Revere when you were in school?" I was grateful she didn't ask, "Did you know Paul Revere when you were in school?" You know, when they say things like, "Did you know Abraham Lincoln?" You're like, no, maybe my parents did. But I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, why did Paul Revere ride his horse all the way from Boston to Lexington?" And before I could answer, she said, "Because his horse was too heavy to carry." That was a great way for me to start Independence Day. The humor of a child and thinking about sometimes we do things it's as simple as, well, it's too heavy to do it the other way. Let me go the simple way. When we think about our nation celebrating freedom and independence, the Declaration of Independence was set into motion 239 years ago with the signing of a document that says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," the smile, our ability to smile. And if you think about it, today we enjoy freedoms that began as ideas. Ideas that became a written document, a declaration that became guiding principles and practices. And then guiding principles and practices that became a living experience, a reality. The only way to bring it into reality from idea to physical reality is truly a process. That the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. Don't everybody speak up at one time. You didn't know there was going to be a history quiz, huh? The Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. The Constitution was not put into effect until 1788. 12 years. 12 years from the signing until it really became something that was brought to life. That it truly is a process that requires vision and commitment and action. Now, have you ever sought your independence? Think back when you wanted to be independent and get your driver's license. Maybe you wanted to be independent and move away from home. Maybe you wanted to be independent from a relationship or a job, or independent from debt, or you wanted your independence. Have you ever declared your independence? After declaring it, has anyone not had to do additional work? Declaring it is only a part of it, that it is a process of bringing it about. And it is a process of maintaining that freedom requires responsibility. It requires steadfast vision. It requires vision and commitment and balance. That we don't just acquire it and then forget about it, we maintain it. And in a sense, it's very much that way with our spiritual freedom. And that's what we want to really think about today, the idea of our spiritual freedom. The Buddhist monk Thomas Merton said, "The most important question you can ask yourself in the spiritual life is not, are you happy, but are you free?" Are you free? If you really think about it, What we all seek is freedom. Sometimes it feels like freedom from something, but what we're really seeking is freedom to express our freedom, freedom to express our liberties, freedom to express our creativity, freedom to express our life. The spiritual life itself is truly all about freedom. And so ask yourself, am I free? How free am I? Are there areas in my life that appear to be less free? And what gives spiritual freedom? And then most importantly, what can inhibit one's spiritual freedom? Can anything inhibit your spiritual freedom? You see, what is spiritual freedom? Spiritual freedom is what we would say our birthright, that it's our divine inheritance, that we inherit this. If we think about being expressions of all that is, referred to as children of God, but expressions of all that is, if we have a divine inheritance, what is it we inherit? We inherit the Spirit of God. And the fact that we inherit the very Spirit, the life energy, the life force of all that is, that in and of itself constitutes our freedom. I love the word constitution because a constitution is what something is made of. You see, what we're made of is the very fabric of the universe, and that in and of itself establishes our spiritual freedom, that we are spirit. We inherit the Spirit of God, that everyone inherits this life force. Nothing can take it away. Nothing can take away our spiritual freedom. However, we can give it away. And I think probably the most accurate way to look at that is we can fail to claim it. That all of the sacred scriptures are really focusing on helping us claim what is already ours. That just because you may be given something, it doesn't mean, has meaning for you until we claim it. And so it is with this spiritual inheritance. And so knowing that there are places in life where the Spirit of God wants to express more fully activates us to claim it. Because not only do we claim it, have you ever received, how many of you have an ATM card where you can go to the bank and use your card to get money? So you got this card, and let's suppose you have $10,000 in the bank, it's there. But there's something you have to do with that card. You must activate it. That in order to make it active, to make it accessible, you have to activate it. So it is with our spiritual freedom, that the experience of life is about activating it. It's about making it active. It's about living from that awareness, and nobody else can do that for us. That's the good news. Nobody can take our spiritual freedom away, and no one can give it to us. It's up to us to claim it and to activate it. And so today we're going to look at that through the lens of three particular statements or questions. And the first one is what you are. What you are. So often in life, we don't think so much about what we are, we think about who we are. We think about our somebody training. Ram Dass talks about that we've all had somebody training, that everybody is born into this world as a little baby somebody. And that somebody grows into a you and a me, whoever we are. But our somebody, who we are, we begin to know that by the labels, by the roles we take on, by the things that other people tell us. And probably at some point in your life, you start to unravel your somebody training when you go to therapy, or you find a spiritual tradition, or however you do that. But it's about realizing that who we are is simply how we dress up what we are. But that what we are is the likeness and the image of God, all that is. Who we are is simply how we show up and how that looks in our life each and every day. There's a story from the Sufi tradition about a wise fool named Nasruddin. Nasruddin was always teaching through these stories. And so one day, Nazarene is dressed up like someone who never heard Woodstock was over. And he's still walking around. And he walks into a bank with this very large check. And he says, I need to cash this check, please. And the teller looks at it and looks at him and looks at this large check and looks at him and says, sir, I need some identification. You'll need to identify yourself. And he said, well, I'm Nazarene. I need to cash my check. And she said, sir, I can't cash your check. I need some identification. You'll need to identify yourself. And this went on and on for a few minutes, and he feels around and finally he says, wait. And he runs over to the next teller line, and he talks to a lady in line, and now she starts shuffling through her purse. And the teller is wondering, what is he doing? And she hands him something. And he comes back, and the teller says, sir, he said, I want to cash this check. And she said, sir, you'll need to identify yourself. So he picks up a mirror and he looks at him and he says, see, this is me. This is Nazarene. Yep, this is who I am. I love that story because it reminds us that life is always asking us, can you identify yourself? Who do you know yourself to be? And we get so caught up with our who that we forget about our what, the what of what we are. Because your who may have been tarnished or may have been hurt or may have made some mistakes. And you so identify with that you forget really what you are, and that what you are is the likeness and the image of God. I have a $100 bill here. About a $100 bill that was for you, how many of you would want it? Of course, everybody would want it. But what if $100 bill. At least Pat still wants it. Anybody else still want it? Still want it? Still want it? Let me ask you a question. Does whatever happens to this have anything to do with the value of this? No. You see, that's how we get our who and our what tangled up. Because even if this has a little tear, even if it's been through the washer, even if it's been around the world, even if it's stinky and all wadded up, is the value still there? Yes, the value is there. You see, the greatest gift of our spiritual freedom is remembering that what we are can never be diminished. It does not matter how my condition, mine may compare to yours. It doesn't matter how yours compares to his or his compares to hers. We get so focused on that we forget that the value is in our very constitution, that there is nothing or no one that can take that away. And that's where our spiritual freedom begins, when we begin to remember that I am the image, the likeness, the expression of God. Emily Cady wrote in this book, Lessons of Truth, she wrote this book first. It's had many, many publications, but the first publishing of this book was in 1894. Unity considers it one of its classic texts, titled Lessons in Truth, and it actually started as a group of lessons that she wrote that were compiled into a book. And the thing that I love about this, the book begins with a question that says, bondage or liberty, which? And she talks about that all of us in life are asking and responding to that question. She writes, now remember, this was written in the late 1800s, so the language is very 1890-ish. Hitherto, we have believed that we were helped and comforted by others, that we receive joy from outside circumstances and surroundings, but it is not so. All joy and strength and good spring up from a fountain within one's own being. And if we only knew this truth, we should know that because God in us is the fountain out of which springs all our good. Nothing that anyone does or says or fails to do or say can take away our joy or our good. Someone has said our liberty comes to us from understanding the mind and the thoughts about God towards us. Does God regard man as his servant or his child? Most of us have believed ourselves not only the slaves of circumstance, but also at the best, the servants of the Most High. Neither belief is true. It is time for us to wake up to right thoughts, to know that we are not servants but children, and if children, then heirs. Heirs to what? Heirs to all that is, heirs to the kingdom, heirs to the Spirit of God which is within us. Do you stop to think, really to comprehend what it means to be an heir of God and joint heir with Christ? It means, as Emerson said, every man is the inlet that may become the outlet of all there is in God. That we are each and every one inlets and outlets of all there is in God. Would you give me this first slide? When your image and your idea and your construct of self is one of spirit identification, you realize that the spirit, the force of life within you, is never stuck. That as we identify with spirit, that the force of life within us is never stuck. And therefore, the places in our life where we appear stuck, it is the spirit within us that can lift us beyond any state of being stuck. And a part of that comes when we begin to realize that I am an inlet and an outlet for God for all that is. If God wants to download new ideas, new healings, new blessings in your life, do you allow it? Where does unworthiness, self-judgment, limiting beliefs keep us from allowing that to show up into our life, to freely download? What keeps me from being a great inlet for all that God is? And equally, as an inlet and an outlet are one and the same, to what degree am I an outlet for God for all that is? How much am I willing to be a channel for God? How do I block it? How am I afraid? How do I try to control it? Because if you're going to download more of the infinite spirit, the wisdom, the freedom of God, it not only has to come into you, it has to flow through you. It has to become you, that we literally are it. One of the greatest practices for recognizing and remembering what we are in the midst of who and how we may be showing up is to recognize that in others. Would you give me the next slide? A Course in Miracles says, I can only awake to the truth about me if I am willing to be awake to the truth about you. Don't you believe that our country is beginning to realize this? You see, freedom was never brought about because the critical mass said it's time to be free. Because the majority never said. The majority never stood up and said it's time for slavery to end. The majority never stood up and said it's time for women to vote. The majority of these things never may stand up, but there's a critical mass. And when a critical mass of people stand up, that's what's happening now. A tipping point takes place. When a tipping point of people can realize, namaste, I behold the divinity in you, and only to the degree that I can see you as an expression of God, I can only hold that same truth for myself. So take a deep breath. That in order for it to be true for us, we must allow it to be true for all others. 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, whenever though they turn to face God as Moses did, God removes the veil, and there they are, face to face. They suddenly recognize that God is a living personal presence, not a piece of chiseled stone. And when God is personally present, a living spirit, that old constricting law is recognized as obsolete. We're free of it, all of us, nothing between us and God. Our face is shining with the brightness of his face. And so we are transfigured much like the Messiah. Our lives greatly becoming brighter and more beautiful as God enters into our lives and we become more like God. For where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. The Spirit is where we activate it, where we recognize it and allow it to be. So the first thing is, what am I? What am I? And to let that whatness inform my who-ness. I think Dr. Seuss would have liked that, my who-ness. The second one is, where am I? That no matter where I am, the Spirit of God is. A few days ago, I was out walking my little dog, Zoe, in my neighborhood. I have a little 3.5-pound Yorkie Poodle mix. She's 10, just turned 10. She's just a little thing. Doesn't take long to go for a walk with her. But as we were out walking, I looked over, and in my neighborhood, there's a dog run. There's a dog, probably from here to about where the back would be, the back wall, this fenced-in area where dogs can run off leash. And as I was walking her, something caught my eye, and I saw the little door was open, the fence was open, and a wild turkey was walking into the dog walk. And I stood in amazement because when the turkey got inside, it picked up its pace and started kind of trotting around the dog fence. I wished I'd have had my camera. And I watched that turkey run around inside the fence, a wild turkey. And I thought, maybe that turkey had been standing at the edge of the forest and saw dogs running in that. And that wild, free turkey thought, I wonder what it would feel like to experience freedom from the inside of a fence. And I thought, maybe that's what our soul says. I wonder what it would feel like to experience freedom from inside a body. I wonder what it would feel like to experience the infinite inside the finite, inside the boundaries of a form. I wonder what it'd be like if I could carry my spirit of freedom with me no matter what my situation or circumstances look like. Even in those places and times when I feel backed in a corner, even in those places and times when I feel stuck in something that I'm not enjoying, can I still remember what I am and that the Spirit of God is never blocked, is never limited? As if that message wasn't enough, would you give me the next slide? So now coming to the church. Here is a turkey with 3 little baby, if you can see behind it, 3 little baby turkey. What are baby turkey called? Turkeyettes? Baby turkeys. Small turkeys. And when I saw this turkey again, I had to look it up to say, okay, what's the spiritual significance of a turkey here? You're not going to believe this. A turkey symbolizes rebirth and unlocking the fullness of life. So the turkey's message, the turkey's been running around the church grounds saying, hello, unlock the fullness of life. It's time. You're the ones. You can do it. Whether you're in a fence or out of a fence, unlock the fullness of life. That it doesn't matter where we are, that we can unlock the fullness of life. So what we are, who we are, and the third point, most importantly, is now we are. Now. That now is the time. The Emerald Tablet says, be ye master of all that surrounds thee. Never be mastered by the circumstances of thy life. The only way to act on that is to claim our spiritual inheritance. That no matter what we are facing, no matter what diagnosis, what the bank account looks like, what the children are doing, what the parents are doing, what the job is doing or not doing, in the midst of all of that, that now is the time to remember that the Spirit of God is seeking to express in and through and as me, right here and right now. Again, in A Course in Miracles, which is a body of work that is attributed to the energy of Jesus, it's the Christ energy, says, do not be concerned about your own readiness. Just be consistently aware of mine. Don't be concerned about your own readiness or your own lack of readiness, but be consistently aware of mine, the great I am, all that is. Would you give me the next slide and prepare for that video, Mike? I want to close by sharing a short video about this man. I had the opportunity to learn about Andy Mackey. He lived in Washington State. Andy Mackey had experienced incredible challenges in his life, including health challenges. He had had numerous heart attacks. He had over 10 surgeries. He was drawing from Social Security a little over $600 a month, and he was spending all of that and then some to buy medicine every month. And Andy realized he was not free. And I want to show you this video. Is it ready, Mike?
Every time 70-year-old Andy Mackey draws a breath, it's music to his ears, whether there's a harmonica there or not. He's just glad to be alive.
How are you still sitting here?
I guess they don't need a harmonica player in heaven yet.
Andy Mackey, a Scottish-born retired horse trainer, lives in this camper in northwest Washington state. Lives here even though technically, medically, he should have died long ago. After his 9th heart surgery, Andy's doctors had him on 15 different medicines, but the side effects made life miserable. So one day, he quit taking all 15 and decided to spend his final days doing something he always wanted to do.
Go out, 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 in, out.
Andy used the money he would have spent on the prescriptions to give away 300 harmonicas
Out.
with lessons.
Very good.
And when he didn't die the next month, he bought a few hundred more.
I just started going from school to school.
It's now 11 years and 13,000 harmonicas later.
I'll see a pregnant lady on the sidewalk and I'll give her a harmonica for the baby.
He taught us a lot. He's very nice. Everybody likes him. Everybody.
To keep the kids interested in music as they get older, Andy now spends the bulk of his Social Security check making what he calls strum sticks. He's given away thousands of these, too. He also buys store-made instruments for kids who show a special interest and provides free lessons to everyone
Declan, give me an E.
by getting the older kids to teach the younger kids.
Yeah, he's getting the hang of it. I tell him music is a gift. You give it away. You give it away and you get to keep it forever.
The end result is something truly unique to this corner of America. Seems everywhere you look, every place you go, every kid you meet has that same genuine passion for fiddle music.
I can't explain the joy. I don't think Bill Gates feels any richer inside than I do.
Do you think you're still living today because of the kids and the music?
I really believe that.
I love that story about Andy. He has since made his transition, but he lived almost another 20 years, gave away over 20,000 harmonicas, and taught many, many children. Would you give me that song? Many, many children. A joy that was his joy. And I truly believe it is because he set himself free. When he stopped trying to save his life, so to speak, and he just became free, his whole life opened up. And his freedom touched life after life after life. And he passed along something that will be now passed on and passed on. This week, even the turkeys are here to remind us that it's time for us to unlock more of the fullness of the blessings of our life by claiming it. I invite you this week to stop and to ask yourself, what am I? Where am I? Now am I? I am the spirit of all that is, and what is seeking to be expressed through me. And so we have this song to help us anchor this and then enter into a time of meditation. The song says, I am free, I am unlimited. I am free, I am unlimited. There are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited right now. I am free, I am unlimited. There are no chains